So, picture this, I was just trying to grab some milk. Yeah, milk. Standard Tuesday afternoon in Chicago, you know. Sun was shining, pigeons were doing their usual dive-bombing thing, and then, chaos. Pure, unadulterated chaos. I was in the grocery store, aisle 5, reaching for the 2% when the screaming started. Not just regular shouting, but that primal, gut-wrenching scream you hear in horror movies. I peeked around the end cap, and that's when I saw it. Old Mrs. Henderson, who always smelled faintly of lavender and judgment, well, she was trying to eat Mr. Peterson's face. And Mr. Peterson, bless his soul, was looking less than pleased about it. My brain just froze. It was like, nope, this isn't happening. This is a dream. I'm going to wake up, and my milk will still be in the fridge. But then another scream, and a sickening crunch, and suddenly everyone was either running, or, worse. They were stumbling, eyes glazed over, that vacant, hungry look. One guy, I'll never forget him, he had a perfectly good hot dog in his hand, and he just dropped it to lunge at a woman. The sheer primal savagery of it, the way they moved, jerky, desperate, driven by something so fundamentally wrong. I remember seeing a kid, no older than 10, get bitten and then, like, 5 minutes later, he was up and running, trying to bite his own mother. That's what broke me. The innocence gone, replaced by this, hunger. It was a visual that's burned into my retinas. The world literally went mad in the span of a single aisle. I ditched the milk, obviously. Grabbed a can of beans and a bottle of water and bolted. The streets were a war zone. Cars were smashed, people were everywhere, some trying to escape, others, well, you saw what I saw in the store. It was a feeding frenzy. The sounds, oh God, the sounds. The moans, the guttural growls, the wet tearing noises, it was a symphony of the apocalypse. I saw a police officer, a big guy with a stern face I'd seen patrolling my neighborhood for years, get swarmed. He fought, he really did, but there were too many. And then, he just stopped. And then he joined them. That moment, seeing authority, seeing the good guys fall, that was when the real terror sunk in. This wasn't something we could fight with tasers or bullets. This was something else entirely. I've been holed up in this abandoned apartment building for 3 days. The power's out, of course. My phone's got about 5% battery left, and I'm not sure who I'd even call. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant moan, sends a jolt of ice through my veins. I've got a few cans of food left, but it's not going to last. I haven't seen another living soul that I could trust. Everyone's either a victim or a perpetrator. You look at someone, you wonder if they're going to snap, if they're hiding a bite. It's the isolation, too. The sheer, crushing loneliness. You can't even cry, because what's the point? Who's going to hear you? You just have to keep moving, keep quiet, keep breathing. If you're out there, listening to this, or reading this, wherever you are, what would you do? Would you even try to find other survivors, or would you just keep to yourself, trying to be invisible? It's a thought that keeps me up at night. The hunger is gnawing at me, and it's not just for food. It's a hunger for hope, a hunger for a signal that says I'm not the last one left. If this is somehow being recorded and out there, please, if you find this, consider subscribing to my channel and hitting that like button. It's the only way I can think of to leave some kind of record, some kind of proof that I was here. That we were here. The scratching sound started again, closer this time. Not just a scuttling, but a deliberate drag, like something heavy being pulled across the rough concrete. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't the usual noise of rats or stray cats. This was different. Deeper. More persistent. My eyes darted around the dim interior of the abandoned convenience store, searching for a source, for any sliver of understanding. The light from my phone, still weakly illuminating the makeshift journal I'd been writing in, cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock my isolation. I'd been holed up here for what felt like days, the silence punctuated only by my own ragged breathing and the unsettling symphony of the outside world. The gnawing hunger was still there, a constant ache, but it was the growing dread that was truly paralyzing me. A sudden, sharp rap against the boarded-up window made me jump, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. It was too forceful to be the wind. Too rhythmic to be debris. Someone, or something, was trying to get in. I scrambled back, tripping over a fallen shelf. The phone clattered from my grasp, plunging the room into near-total darkness, save for the faint moonlight filtering through cracks in the boards. The rapping stopped. A heavy sigh, ragged and guttural, seemed to seep through the very wood. Then, the dragging sound began again, moving along the exterior wall, punctuated by intermittent thuds. It was circling the building, methodically. I pressed myself against the cold, grimy wall, trying to make myself as small and silent as possible. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to break through the back door and disappear into the night. But where would I go? Every street was a potential trap, every shadow a hiding place for the things that made that sound. My fingers fumbled in the dark, searching for anything that could serve as a weapon. A broken broom handle. A shard of glass. My fingers closed around the cold, smooth metal of a discarded can. It was pathetic, but it was all I had. The dragging noise had stopped directly outside the front entrance. A low, moaning sound replaced it, a sound that spoke of a hunger far worse than my own. It wasn't a cry for help. It was something else entirely. Something ancient and terrible. Then, the wood began to splinter. Not a quick, violent crack, but a slow, deliberate tearing. Each groan of the tortured plank sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. I could see faint outlines of something pushing against the boards, something that wasn't human, not anymore. The hunger I felt was nothing compared to the consuming need that was now trying to force its way in. The light from my phone, still lying somewhere on the floor, flickered back to life, illuminating a sliver of the horror unfolding just inches away. The wood wasn't just splintering, it was being peeled back, layer by agonizing layer. The scraping sound intensified, a grating noise that scraped at my nerves. Whatever was out there was getting closer, its efforts more desperate. The wood groaned, protesting the relentless pressure. I scrambled backward, my hands finding the cold, rough stone of the wall. My breath hitched. The sliver of light from the phone had vanished, plunging the small space into near total darkness again, save for the faint, sickly glow emanating from the gaps in the barricade. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to make myself smaller, invisible. The smell of damp earth and something else, something foul and decaying, filled the air. It was a smell that promised teeth and claws and a gnawing emptiness. I could hear heavy, uneven breathing just on the other side of the thin barrier. It wasn't the ragged gasps of a human caught in a bad situation, it was a wet, guttural sound that vibrated through the very stone I leaned on. Then, a new sound. A wet, tearing noise. It wasn't the boards anymore. It was something else. The barricade was still holding, but it was clearly weakened. I could feel a slight shift in the ground beneath me, as if something heavy had just moved. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was it giving up? Or was it finding a new way? A sudden, violent impact shook the entire structure. The wood shuddered, and a shower of splinters rained down. The sickly light intensified for a moment, showing a dark, grasping appendage momentarily visible through a widening crack before it withdrew. It was thick, slick, and ended in ragged, elongated nails. It looked less like a hand and more like a clawed root. My stomach churned. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. I scanned the tiny space again, desperate for any escape, any weapon. My eyes landed on a loose stone near my foot. It was heavy, rough-edged. Not much, but it was something. I snatched it up, my fingers trembling. The sounds from outside grew more frantic. Another impact, harder this time, and a deep crack appeared in the center of the barricade. The foul smell intensified, and I could almost taste the decay in the air. This was it. It was coming through. I braced myself, the rough stone a pathetic defense against the encroaching horror. The crack widened, and a dark, dripping mass began to push through. It was Tuesday, I think. Or maybe Wednesday. The days all blurred into a gray, reeking mess. I was standing on the roof of my apartment building, overlooking what used to be my city. Now. It was a charnel house. I'd seen it happen, right from here. The first screams were just noise. Then the panic. Then the running. And then I saw them. They weren't just people anymore. Their skin was stretched taut over bone, gray and mottled. Their eyes, empty sockets or sometimes, a milky, glazed stare that followed nothing. The worst was the sound they made. A guttural, wet rasp that sent shivers down my spine even from this distance. I watched a woman, a neighbor I'd waved to 1,000 times, gnawing on the arm of a man who was already on the ground. Her face was contorted, a mask of pure, animalistic hunger. She didn't even seem to notice the blood smeared across her chin, the way her jaw worked with unnatural speed. It was like watching a bad dream, except the stench of decay was real, clawing at my throat. I scrambled back from the edge, my stomach churning. This wasn't some movie, this was life now. And life meant figuring out how to not end up like that woman on the street. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, gnawing fear. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every distant moan felt like it was directed at me. I hadn't eaten anything substantial in 2 days. My meager supply of canned beans was almost gone, and the thought of venturing out there, into that mess, made me want to vomit. But staying here wasn't an option either. The building wasn't exactly a fortress. The ground floor windows were boarded up, but the whole place felt temporary. Fragile. I thought about the others in the building, but I hadn't seen anyone since the chaos started. Were they hiding? Were they gone? The uncertainty was a different kind of terror, a slow creep of paranoia. I found myself constantly checking the door, listening for any sound that wasn't the wind or the distant, horrible symphony of the infected. A sudden clatter from a few floors below made me jump. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was it one of them? Or was it someone else? Someone alive? The thought of another survivor, another human being, was almost overwhelming. But then the paranoia kicked in again. Could I trust them? In this world, trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. I remembered the stories I'd heard before, people turning on each other for a can of soup, for a safe place to sleep. So, I stayed put. I held my breath, listening. The clatter stopped. Silence. Just the ever-present, low hum of the nightmare outside. I gripped the broken piece of pipe I'd found, its rough edges digging into my palm. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. And right now, all I had was the hope that whatever made that noise, it wasn't coming for me. The hunger pangs were starting to get worse, a dull ache that was quickly becoming unbearable. I had to move. I had to find something. The silence outside was worse than the noise. It felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap. My stomach growled again, a pathetic sound that seemed to echo in the cramped space. I couldn't stay here. Not with the gnawing emptiness and the unknown lurking just beyond the thin walls. Shaking, I pushed myself up. My legs felt weak, like they'd forgotten how to hold me. I crept to the doorway, the broken pipe held out in front of me like a sword. The hallway was dark, a deeper black than the room I'd just left. Faint moonlight filtered through a grimy window at the far end, casting long, distorted shadows. Nothing moved. But the hum was louder here, a vibration that seemed to seep into my bones. I took a step, then another, my bare feet sticking slightly to the gritty floor. Each creak of the building was a siren, screaming my presence to whatever was out there. My eyes scanned the corridor, searching for anything that looked like food, or at least a better hiding place. Debris was scattered everywhere, overturned furniture, ripped posters, and what looked like dried, dark stains on the floor. I tried not to think about what those stains were. The hunger was a constant, insistent pressure, making me reckless. I needed to find something, anything, to put in my mouth. A sudden scuffling sound from further down the hall made me freeze. It was faint, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. But there were no leaves here. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to blend into the shadows. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drummer in the oppressive quiet. Was it the same thing from before? Or something else? Slowly, I edged forward, peering around a corner. The moonlight illuminated a section of the hallway, and there, hunched over something on the floor, was a figure. It was still, its back to me. The moonlight caught the ragged edge of its clothing, the unnatural angle of its limbs. It wasn't just standing, it was, tearing at something. A wet, ripping sound reached my ears, and a metallic scent, coppery and sharp, filled the air. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, a wave of nausea washing over me. When I opened them again, the figure hadn't moved. It continued its grim task, oblivious to my presence. Or perhaps not. Perhaps it knew. Perhaps it was just waiting. The hunger was a distant memory now, replaced by a cold, suffocating dread. I needed to get out of here. But where? The hallway stretched in both directions, both equally terrifying. The hum seemed to intensify, a low thrumming that vibrated in my skull. I could feel it, a creeping, insidious presence. And then, a low groan, guttural and inhuman, echoed from the figure. The groaning stopped as abruptly as it began. I held my breath, muscles coiled, ready to bolt. The figure remained still, a dark silhouette against the faint, sickly light filtering from somewhere down the hall. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze, a heavy, oppressive weight pressing down on me. It wasn't just looking, it was aware. Aware of me, of my fear, of my desperate need to escape. The air grew thick, harder to breathe, and the hum, which I'd almost started to tune out, pulsed with a new, menacing rhythm. It felt like the building itself was breathing, and it was exhaling something ancient and foul. My mind raced. Going back the way I came seemed impossible. The door I'd entered through was likely sealed by now, or worse, guarded by whatever this thing was. The only other option was forward, into the unknown, towards the source of that unsettling hum and the chilling groan. It was a gamble, a desperate throw of the dice, but staying here felt like a slow, inevitable surrender. I had to move. With excruciating slowness, I began to back away, my feet barely making a sound on the dusty floor. Each tiny shuffle felt amplified, a deafening announcement of my retreat. The figure didn't react. It didn't turn its head, didn't shift its weight. It just was. A sentinel, a guardian, a trap. The thought sent another wave of nausea through me. Still, I kept moving, inch by agonizing inch, until my back bumped against the rough, cold stone of the wall. Turning, I started to walk, trying to keep my movements fluid, not panicked. The hum seemed to follow me, a constant reminder of the horror I was leaving behind, or perhaps, the horror I was walking towards. The hallway ahead narrowed slightly, the oppressive darkness deepening. The walls were slick with something that glinted faintly, and a damp, earthy smell filled the air, mingling with the metallic tang that seemed to be the building's natural perfume. I passed more doorways, all like the one I'd first seen, gaping maws leading into impenetrable black. I resisted the urge to peek, to see what horrors lurked within. My focus had to remain on the path ahead, on putting distance between myself and that thing in the corridor. The hum intensified as I rounded a bend, and I could now discern a faint, pulsing light emanating from further down. It was a sickly, greenish glow, weak but persistent, like a dying ember. As I approached the source of the light, the hum resolved itself into a complex, layered sound, a symphony of low frequencies and sharp, intermittent clicks. It was disorienting, almost hypnotic. The air here was colder, carrying a faint whisper of wind that seemed to come from nowhere. The light emanated from a larger chamber, and as I cautiously peered around the edge of the corridor, my breath caught in my throat. It was a vast, cavernous space, and in the center, suspended by thick, pulsating cables of the same greenish light, was a colossal, amorphous mass. It pulsed in time with the hum, its surface rippling with unseen energy. And around it, arranged in a circular pattern, were more of those figures, standing perfectly still, their forms indistinguishable in the gloom. They were not guarding the mass, they were part of it, their stillness an extension of its own, their purpose as enigmatic as the pulsating entity itself. The dread I felt intensified, no longer a personal fear, but a universal chill that seeped into my very bones. This was not an escape, it was an arrival at a destination I never knew existed, a place where the world ended and something else began. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the unsettling. As we conclude, I urge you to remember the paramount importance of preparation. The scenarios we've explored, while fictional, highlight the fragility of our comfort and the unpredictable nature of survival. A key tenet of preparedness is understanding your environment. Know your local flora and fauna, learn basic first aid, and have a plan for contingencies, however unlikely they may seem. Even simple knowledge, like identifying edible plants, can be the difference between life and death. We saw how the ordinary can transform into the terrifying, how the familiar suddenly becomes a landscape of dread. The stillness of those figures, once perceived as passive, revealed itself as an active, almost gravitational force, pulling everything into its unnerving orbit. It wasn't a fight against flesh and blood as one might initially imagine, but a confrontation with a pervasive inertia, a fundamental shift in the very fabric of existence that made resistance feel futile. The experience underscored that the greatest threats are often those that defy conventional understanding, those that operate on principles we haven't yet grasped. This unsettling reality serves as a stark reminder: vigilance and foresight are not merely advisable, they are essential. The world, as we know it, can change in an instant. Cultivating self-reliance, honing practical skills, and building resilient communities are not optional extras, they are the foundations upon which future security will be built. Always maintain a calm demeanor, even when faced with overwhelming circumstances. Panic is a predator, feeding on rational thought and paralyzing action. Breathe, assess, and adapt. Your greatest asset in any crisis is a clear and collected mind. I sincerely hope this narrative has offered a thought-provoking reflection on preparedness and the human spirit's capacity to endure. If you found value in these insights, please consider subscribing to our channel for more explorations into the art of survival and resilience. Your engagement is invaluable, so please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or any preparedness tips you'd like to share with our community. Together, we can foster a greater sense of readiness and mutual support.